Hello sir, my name is Vivan Roy and we are from group number 6. Our chosen country was Thailand. In our group consists of 4 people, which is myself, Tang Cheo Hui, Tan Ke Wei and Chua Pi. So now I want to present the inflation rate for Thailand country. First of all, here I have stated that the word IR, which means inflation rate. According to the data from Trading Economy, the highest inflation rate is on April 2021, which is 3.41%, and the lowest inflation rate is on February 2020, which is 0.74%. The highest negative inflation rate is on May 2021, which is negative 3.44%, and the lowest negative inflation rate is on March 2021, which is negative 0.08%. Secondly, I want to compare the positive inflation rate and the negative inflation rate. On April 2021, the inflation rate was 3.41%, which means the cost of living for that month compared to last year is higher. On March 2021, the negative inflation rate was negative 0.08, which means the cost of living for that month compared to last year is lower. After that, I want to say the big changes in the inflation rate. The inflation rate decreased from March 2020 and increased in April 2021. So the inflation rate is from negative 0.54% growth back to 3.41%. Finally, I conclude that the cost of living of Thailand country was decreasing overall, which means deflation.
Hi, Mr. Yi. I am Chen Wei. For the part A, I'm responsible for the quarterly annual growth rate. So, I start from my first slide. So, according to the data from the trading economy, the quarterly annual growth rate of the Thailand from the March 2020 to the March 2021 is having a negative revert toward a positive value of the percentage. So, for the next slide, we can show about this data. So if from the March 2020 is the negative 2.1%. So this point is the lower negative annual growth rate during for this time. So for the next slide is starting from the June 2020. It was the negative 12.1%, which was the higher negative annual growth rate during this period. So as we saw in the Jan 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Thailand GDP has dropped by the negative 12.1%. So which is the low in the Thailand in the 2020 to the 2021. Okay. So for the next, the data is by the October 2020, the growth rate seemed to have the increase in the negative 6.4%. So after growth rate had peaked up the better, so the economy is slowly moving towards stable by growth to the regulation. So as this period, the people were encouraged to stay at home, and the business activity were also forced to stop running to avoid the spread of the COVID-19. And then for the last is, we can see at the same time the future economy growth which the slowly increase already. So in the Jan 2021 is the negative 4.1%, and the April of the 2021 is the negative 2.6%. So overall, the Thailand economic growth rate is slowly recovering and growing.
Today, I'd like to discuss about Thailand monthly employment rate within the year of 2020. First, we are going to look at the graph from Trading Economics. There are some changes within the year. So coming on, we are looking more forward into each month. So in Jan and February, the employment rate in Thailand is begin at 1.1%. So coming on to the March, so it dropped until 1%, which is also the lowest among the chart. So now we move on to the period of April to May. So we know that within this month, over the world are facing a very serious pandemic, and everywhere are starting lockdown to prevent of COVID-19. So within this month was stopped for a quarter survey. Next, in July, the employment rate having a very big changes with as rise to 2.1%, which was the highest among the chart. As you can see, in this month, many people is facing unemployed. So coming to August and September, it has dropped to 1.9 and 1.79%. It's quite a good sign in Thailand that employment rate is slightly improved. But in October, it rises again till 2.09%, as also this amount is the second highest within the chart. Lastly, we think about the last 2 months of 2020. Thailand employment rate is dropped at 1.5% in December 2020 from the previously month on 2% in November 2020. So in this chart, we can see that the chart is fluctuated sharply and unstable within the second half of 2020. So overall in Thailand, is increasing on their employment rate.
The following is the chart of Thailand unit labor cost. So now we are focusing to looking at the monthly labor force participant rate from January 2020 until March 2021. So as a diagram, you can see it, the data just provide us from January 2020 until July 2020. So we can see it from January 2020 is only 89.11 point. It is also the lowest during this period, and this is the first quarter of 2020. It hit a low record of 89.11 points. In the next turning points after 3 months, labor force on increased 96.82 points. It will also mean that the number of people has increased during these 3 months, and the number of labor in Thailand is on rise. Most people are looking for work. So in a turning point then proceeds to the next 3 months. After the labor force increased 106.47 points, it is the highest ever data. It is set a record high of 106.47 points. In the third quarter of 2020, the data on the number of people looking for work in Thailand labor force has increased significantly. The last turning point on the table entered the last 3 months after the labor force dropped to 102.3 points. Lastly, the overall chart of Thailand unit labor provide Thailand labor cost actual values, historical data, forecast, graph, statistic, economy calendar, and news. Thailand unit labor cost value, historical data, and graph was last updated in July 2020. So according to Trading Economic Global Macro Models and the analyzed expectation, by the end of quarter, Thailand labor costs are expected to reach 81 points. Looking ahead, we estimate that Thailand labor costs will remain at 81 within 12 months according to our model of economic measurement.
So now we are moving to part B. So now I want to present the effect of negative growth rate on graduate who plan to buy a house. The graduate who plan to buy a house may have lack of job opportunity in the country, because when the negative growth rate in the country, which means the demand is less in the final goods are produced. So the graduate may have less job opportunity, which can lead them to have difficulty to finding a job to buy a house. And also when the graduate facing a lack of job opportunity in the country, which is lead them to financially unstable at the last no income. For an example, according to the National Statistical Office of Thailand, the coronavirus outbreak cast a shadow over the future of approximately 300 soon-to-be graduates by this year. The bleak prospect of unemployment and layoff as the economy staggers back to growth is expected to continue for at least 2 years. Among these groups are about 500 jobless graduates who have yet to find work since they finished their education, and up to 300 new graduates who will enter the job market this year. Secondly, the effect of deflation on graduates who plan to buy a house. The graduate who plan to buy a house may have difficulty to find a job, because when the country experiencing deflation, It is because when the price is fall, which means less consumer demand, so the lower consumer demand, which leads to increase in unemployment rate in the country. So the graduate will be mentally disturbed, which is cause them to be depression, mental stress, and loss of self-confidence. Thirdly, the effect of unemployment rate on graduate who plan to buy a house. The graduate who plan to buy a house may have difficulty to buy because the effect of unemployment rate in the country. So the graduate may have difficulty to borrow money or loan from the bank, and the loan application will be rejected. The reason why bank is not easily borrowing money or loan to graduate is because they will consider that whether the graduate are able to pay back the loan or not. So the graduate who plan to buy a house might be delay and postpone. For an example, the coronavirus pandemic hits Thailand residential property market already ailing from slow economic growth, protests, and high prices. The Thailand country, which was among the slowest in Southeast Asia last year, is expected to contract by 8 percentage on year 2020. So the sales of residential units are expected to decline by 40% on year 2020.
So the next, for the part B, I'm responsible for the cafe outlet owner. So firstly, from the March 2020 to the March 2021, the Thailand annual economy growth rate is declined. So the main consideration are follow. Under the current situation, the COVID-19 epidemic may cause international tourists cannot enter this year. So some famous restaurants in the Bangkok are facing decline in the turnover. So the first, we can see for the effect of the negative growth of cafe outlet owner. So the first, the owner is facing sign of closing cafe outlet. So the next, unstable income, unable to pay the employee on the time. And the last is owner of the cafe shop is face very few sources of the customer. So in the next, the cafe outlet owner influencer of the deflections. So it's not motivation and confuse the stage and the financing pressure and the lost directions. And the next, the impact of the closest the cafe outlet owner of this unemployment rate. So the more employees will face the unemployment. So for example, we can see the example is the negative domestic the growth means that many cafe outlets will face the unemployment because of the economic situation for this year. Many the owner cannot open a shop are very affected by the economy by the Thailand. So if the cafe outlet owner face the deflection in this country in the Thailand, so then they will face sign of the bankruptcy, so they will have no income.
So now we are going to discuss about the effect of negative growth rates on low-income workers. As we know, negative growth rate is saying about GDP. So as the first point is saying about people will be choosing to remain on their current job. Why will people choosing remain on their current job? So they will be choosing to remain as negative growth rate will make the currency drop and people doesn't willing to get the risk as facing on job losses. So next was lose confidence to the country. So if the growth rate is keep dropping as people not willing to spend their money, so this was causing on economic will be bad. So can be said so is a bad economic. So next, effect on deflation on low-income workers. So what meaning as deflation? Deflation is a general decline in prices of goods and services. As the deflation means makes prices of service and goods drop, so makes the people have more buying power to buy things. As say that in this moment the money is become big and consumer can buy more things that they want. So coming on, will be saying about employment rate on low income workers. The first point, some workers have unstable job. So as example, low income worker maybe can be say that usually is farmers, fisher or maybe others. They need to follow by the market and weather sometime. So can be say that their job is become unstable. Second, will be say on some workers conference skill is mismatched. They are giving their education level of fields of study. So why we'll be saying that? Because of some low income workers will be doesn't get their most of education level of their study. So this will facing on their maybe they can't like getting a great job or maybe getting a good offer of their education level.
Okay, so now we are coming to the effect of negative growth on government. Negative growth is also used to refer to a country economic contraction which reflect the decline in gross domestic product, which is the GDP. In any quarter of given year, negative growth is usually expressed as a negative percentage, and this include the decline in real personal income, industrial production and retail sales. It increased the unemployment rate. Faced with the declining demand, the companies stop hiring to save money. In the middle of the economic contraction, they begin to lay off workers, causing the unemployment rate to rise. It is one of the four stages of business cycle, also known as a boom and bust cycle. So when the price fall enough to attract new demand, the contraction will end. The monetary policy of the central bank and the fiscal policy of the government can end the contraction faster. They will lower interest rate and taxes and increase money supply and spending. These policies are the part of country's strategy to provide the best unemployment solution. And now we are coming to the second point, the effect of unemployment rate on government. The unemployment rate in Thailand has reached 0.8% in 2020, a small increase from the previous year. Most Thailand population of working age and employed. About 46% of Thailand inhabits work in the service sector, and other large portion of the population work in agriculture. And the unemployment negatively impact the federal government ability to generate income and also tends to reduce economic activity. When unemployment rate is high, fewer people are paying taxes to the government. At the same time, unemployment means there are few people with disposable income to spend on goods and service. Low consumer spending make it more difficult for business to thrift and expand, which damps economic growth. So for example, like the taxation is one of the primary fiscal policy the government it has disposal to reduce the unemployment. And the next example, which is the government spending of government program in other way, the federal government can attempt to the influence unemployment. For example, if the government funds new public from programs such as building infrastructure like roads or train system, it can create jobs that serve to reduce unemployment rate and increase disposable income and spending. And the last example is the consideration. Reducing taxes and increased spending can encourage economic growth and reduce unemployment. Both practices can increase the government debt. So the last point is the effect of deflation on government. Deflation in Thailand, when the capacity of the economy to supply goods and service given it is factories, workers and so on. As this demand has happened increase, there is pressure for price to fall. A continued decline in price deflation can in turn aggravate the economic crisis because consumers expect price will be lower in the future and so have incentive to postpone purchase. They also feel their wages, the price of labor may decline along with price to tend to save more. Many governments calculate exactly this number called core inflation, which is change in price of consumer goods excluding food and fuel. Although changes in the price of food and fuel can spill over to other goods, the idea that is change in core prices should better reflect underlying domestic economic conditions as opposed to movement of volatile international commodity markets. The Bank of Thailand (BOT) target a value for this core inflation rather than overall inflation, so this is the number of most relevant of the outlook of monetary policy.
Next, we are like to discuss about Part C. Part C is as if let's say you are the Prime Minister of Malaysia, which area would I more pay attention to in order to develop Malaysia in next 5 years? So, if I was the Malaysian Prime Minister, we will be choosing on focusing in developing new agricultural technology. So in Malaysia, actually we have many of agriculture product as like rice technology, rubber technology, palm oil technology, all that will be in Malaysia, produced by Malaysia. As this product will be also imported to outsources country whole over the world. So as if let's say we will be choosing to developing a new agriculture technology, so it's also increasing a number of companies that are working on robotics innovation to using on like drones, tractors, robotic harvester, automatic watering system, and also seeding robots. This will be help them to enhance efficiency of every stage of production to make them will be increasing profit and also reduce risk within their production team. So this also will be making our country or even though production company will be getting more profit on their production and also reduce risks on import.
For the Part C, I'm not pay more attention on the rebuilding tourism. As a Prime Minister of Malaysia, the reason why I'm not pay more attention on the rebuilding tourism in the next 5 years is because we won't know that when the COVID-19 issues will be going back to normal, as make as our country economic growth. As we all know that on June 2021, the cases in Malaysia may rise day by day up to 5,000 to 7,000. These are the main reason why I'm not paying more attention on the rebuilding tourism. To prevent Malaysia from experiencing a second wave of COVID-19 infection, the best way of curbing the spread of COVID-19 is to close all the borders will really help to stop the spread of COVID-19.
So next is the improving labor skill. As the Prime Minister of the Malaysia, the reason why I am not paying more attention to improving the labor skill in the next 5 years is because at the beginning of the April this year, the numbering of the employee people due to COVID-19 increasing rapidly. So the reason does not improve by the labor skill is also because of the instability of the income to various industries due to the relationship between the epidemic. So the labor capacity is not one of the area that my country need to develop and pay attention to. So we don't know when the COVID-19 problem will return to the normal, so thereby the boosting our economic growth.
Because Malaysia is driven by investment in the world-class facility and high-quality human resource, Malaysia has an internationally renowned healthcare system. It is accessible to almost all population, and the success of the Malaysian healthcare industry can be attributed to the investment in the first-class facility outside the world. In addition to provide and public hospital, it also provides specialist service. The country operates a two-tier healthcare system, a government-based universal healthcare system, and a private healthcare system. A government-based universal healthcare system and efficient private healthcare system. Healthcare costs in Malaysia are the world lowest, lower than UK and US about 40%. Government subsidies up to 98% of healthcare costs. while Malaysia's goal is to become Asian medical tourism hub, attracting more than 1 million medical tourists annually. Malaysia in this one field and we have done well. So in this reason why there is no choice in next 5 years to strengthen in healthcare in health sector in the field of attention.